some people were asking about what we do that allows us to convert more, and what the differentiators are in terms of what our value proposition is to our clients. And so, I thought it's a good topic for us to talk about in terms of building our business. I think the place that makes most sense for me to start is to talk about, the fact that, first of all, we all know that there's a lot of choices out there for realtors. I don't know how often you guys find yourselves in competitive situations to earn client business. A lot of folks, work strictly by referral, and their leads are very warm leads, which is a great way to do business. I'm also of the belief that, in order to grow a big business, you need to be able to have a decent amount of your business come from colder sources, or I should even say maybe less trusted sources, where you are in competitive situations. I say that, from my own personal experience. For a long time, my business was based entirely on warm leads, friends, referrals, past clients, repeat business. And what I realized as our business started to grow and we started going on more appointments with colder sources, that the presentations that I had, my scripts, my dialogues that I used for those folks, for the warm leads, weren't nearly as effective as when I'm dealing with colder lead sources. So it required me to revamp a lot of what I was doing and how I was talking with folks, and realizing that when I go on a cold appointment, that there's a lot of resistance that we see. I got some nodded heads over here. You with me here? So the idea was, well, what is our differentiator? If we start talking about, photography, signs, advertising, I think a lot of our conversations get lost in the mix with a lot of other people. I think one of the big differentiators is information. And so that's kind of where we decided that this topic would be an appropriate one for all of us, and being able to talk about what it means to really be an expert in the areas that you serve. And I say that because, we don't take on business everywhere. If you called us up and said, hey, I want to list my house in Frederick or in Upper Marlboro, we would actually refer that out over and over again. And we do so because there's a recognition that we are not an expert in those areas. And it's, in order to truly serve the client, I know the value that we provide to our clients here in the Baltimore area. And I know that those same level of services we're unable to provide in outside areas that we don't specialize in. And we could opt to learn and specialize in those areas. The time on task that's required to become an expert in an area that you don't already serve is something that you have to ask yourself and really look at your own business and see what makes sense. It's real easy to kind of chase a commission, say, look, it's maybe a big price point, so it's worth the drive. In my experience, though, I have stubbed my toes way more often than not when I try to chase a high price point in an area that I don't serve, because it takes so much time and energy to really become an expert there. So, what I guess what I can jump right into here is some of the things that we do to become an expert. Like what does that mean for us? And I guess before I kind of jump into that, we have we have a few people here. I mean, I'm curious to hear what some of your own thoughts are as to, you know, what an expert means in the areas that you serve. Can I get some volunteer here? Because I don't want to make this just a lecture. Anybody?
We don't know.
We don't know. Come on. Here we go. We got somebody here.
Staying current and up to date with relevant information in the field, doing things like reading the Realtor magazine and the articles that address nuances in our field and what's important, quarterly trends, things like that.
Okay. So I'll try to, did you all hear that? You want me to repeat that? He was talking about reading, you know, staying on top of trends, going, you know, reading the Realtor magazine quarterly, checking out, you know, what news is happening in the area. It's certainly, I think, a big component to it. Anybody else?
Well, in our office, Mark, we do a really good job of, you know, looking at the different zip codes that we service and look at the different trends, really understanding the areas that we want to service inside and out, basically. What does the days on market look like, price points and such?
Yeah. Yep. That's great. That's a big part of it. I think knowing the numbers is a big part of it. You know, have you guys ever gone on an appointment where you're talking with a seller or a buyer for that matter, and they're telling you about developments in a neighborhood that you weren't aware of? I mean, I know that's happened to me before, even within the Baltimore metro area. You know, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm less of an expert than I should be. You know, there's, I can think recently over in Middle River, we went on I had a listing appointment, and right around it was on Sioux Creek. So I don't know if anyone knows Sioux Creek in Middle River, but there's a marina over there, and the marina just made big news because there's a big development. They're redoing the marina. They're making it basically a destination bar. And I had no idea. You know, I'm sitting there, the seller is telling me these things. And that's part of the reason why they wanted to sell. Maybe it's not a great example of me being an expert in the area, but it's a good example of why we should be experts in the area, why we need to be, because we want to be able to stay in front of those things and be able to like nod our head confidently. Yes, we're aware of those things. It makes people feel more comfortable with what you have to say and, you know, what your forecasts are for market trends. Because a big part of the market trends too, market trends really tell us really the past. They tell us the history. They don't really tell us what's going forward. And in order for us to have any kind of educated hypothesis of where the market's going to go forward, we need to have a good pulse on what's going on in the economy around us, not just the housing market. You know, there's a lot of existential things that affect the housing market and values. So, but I think what I want to be able to dive in with you guys with is to talk about what we do as a team here. And when I say what we do as a team, I mean, we started off, it was just me and my EA, who's Zach. He was my EA originally. And I guess it was about 4 years ago, we were challenged with some questions about where the market is right now and where it's going. And we were asked questions about, you know, what is how many homes have sold in a particular area in the past month, and how does that compare to, 12 months earlier, month over month or year over year. And we really didn't have a great idea, especially in Baltimore City, where we know that, you know, we can subscribe. There are subscriptions available online for things like RBI statistics. You guys ever look at that? Where you're just looking at whole zip codes. But in Baltimore City, we know that whole zip codes, you know, they cross over. There's different neighborhoods throughout. And if you simply are looking at average sales price in a zip code or average days on the market of a zip code, you can be conflating two completely different markets and combining them as if they're all one. So, you know, we realized how not helpful that was in the areas that we serve. And so we started to take in a lot of data. And at first we felt like it was just busy work because there's nothing to compare it with. You know, in our first month of doing this, we collected data of how many homes came on the market this month, how many homes went under contract, what was the days in the market, how many, what's the average days in the market for homes that are on the market versus under contract versus sold, et cetera. And we just had all these data points for one moment in time. And we knew that it would take months before, months of doing this on a monthly basis before we had any kind of picture of what is going on. Certainly not something that we could share with our clients. But I'm gonna share my screen here so you guys can see, and you might wanna move closer just so you can see. And if you're good there too, no worries. So this is, let's see if I can get this to full screen here. View. How do I?
Click on the little green button on the
Right, this one?
there.
Nah, that still's giving me all this.
Oh, go to.
Oh, it's I saw it here. It's view presenter view.
Yeah, that's a Zoom. So you, oh yeah. There you go. Yep, you got it.
All right. So this is something that our team puts together now on a monthly basis to be able to we talk about it internally as a team, but we also use it on our appointments. And it provides, I think, a lot of proprietary information here. I say proprietary because, I mean, anyone can go and pull it, but we've collected it in a way that can be presented in a way that you know, you have to build it out yourself. So we talk about with our clients, you know, to help them understand the differences between a buyer's market and a seller's market and a balanced market. Obviously, these days, we don't have to talk too much about a buyer's market, although there are still areas, and I bet in most of our businesses, there are areas here where if we pull our data together, you'd see that certain markets are technically a buyer's market, even in this moment, even in April when things were crazy around most of the country, most of the state, most of the city, county, metro area. So what we do, I'll show you, you know, we use Bright for this, by the way. So, you know, this looks, I'm sure looks familiar to all of you in terms of your ability to draw a polygon around a certain area. So we do a lot of our work in Canton, Brewers Hill, Patterson Park. This is just one of the neighborhoods that we do this for. But it's pretty simple. Once you set up the search parameters, you can save it and then just go in and open it again and do like a refresh. But this is what makes it proprietary, because this is not the entire 21224 zip code. This is the selected area that we have. And what this allows us to do is really dive into our clients' neighborhoods and say, look, this is the data for this highlighted area. And
This is stuck.
What's that?
We don't see movement of slides.
You don't see any slides?
We only see the title slide right now.
Oh, geez. Okay. Hold on a second. Can you see that?
No.
All right, hold on.
Ever since you went to presenter view,
Okay, all right, let me get out of presenter view then. How do I do that? Screen and show. All right.
It moved now, Mark.
Okay, cool. So sorry, this is what I was showing you before, you know, being able to explain the different kinds of markets that we're in. Are these things familiar to you guys in terms of absorption rates? Have you heard of absorption rates?
Is that what you're calling these, absorption rates?
Well, absorption rate, we have it actually here defined. The absorption, are you guys familiar with what the absorption rate is?
No.
Okay, so it's kind of a theoretical, and this is stuff that, like, you know, if we don't know this stuff, this is stuff we absolutely should know and use to talk about. I think what it does, in my appointments at least, is it distinguishes myself differently than our competition, because our competition, a lot of them are just going in there, they're like, look, here's, you know, what kind of granite do you have? What kind of appliances do you have? You know, is the place in good condition? Okay, here's your market analysis. Here's what we can sell the house for. And that's what ultimately people want, but they can get that from anybody. Almost anybody can come into their home and tell them what their house is worth. But I think what this does is it distinguishes you as an expert, much more so than, and we're actually able to use our listing appointment as an educational tool. So we're going over some of these things. Now, there's certain people, certain disc profiles that we know going into an appointment, or at least we try to know before going into an appointment, if they are analytical at all. If they're totally not analytical, then we skip over a lot of the stuff. You know, but we know that there's a good percentage of folks out there that are analytical and do appreciate this stuff. And sometimes even with someone who's not really that analytical, I will ask them the question, like, you know, would you like me to explain some of this stuff, or do you just want like the short and sweet? And more often than not, people want to hear what you have to say, especially when you're starting to talk about things that others are not. So the absorption rate, though, I think is a super important term for all of us in the real estate business to understand. It really has such an impact on understanding where the market is and where the market's going. And it's a theoretical term, really, because essentially what it means is, based on the previous 6 months demand and the current level of supply, if no new homes came on the market, how long would it take for the current supply to be depleted by demand?
I was commenting that you're calling this the absorption rate. I think I've looked or heard other people talk about this exact same concept, but expressed as volatility. Volatility of an area.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. But what does volatility mean? So this is really honing in and being able to explain it to a client in a way where they can actually like walk away from that making sense. Like, you know,
when I saw your other slide too, it was like, oh, we're using it to express the buyers and sellers market. I was thinking, oh yeah, well, regardless of the rate or the volatility, you can still have buyers or sellers market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, does that make sense to everybody? Because I know that that's an important concept to understand before we keep moving down some of these slides. Does anyone have questions about this? No? Bueller, okay. Oops. All right, so I'm gonna show you, so what I did here, you guys can see this, I assume now. This is from Bright. So this is taking a highlighted area, not just a zip code. And there are certain zip codes where you can just kind of do this across the whole zip code. But I think the value in understanding what we're doing here is that if you want to hone in on a certain development or a certain type of home, you can do that and to figure out what the absorption rate is, because there are plenty of publications out there that will highlight what the absorption rate is in the state of Maryland, or what the absorption rate is in the country right now, or even the absorption rate in a county. And those figures, I mean, real estate is so localized that hearing that information is not very useful for us or for our clients. And it, in fact, in a lot of ways can be very misleading. And the best example I can use is like if, across the country right now, the news is that it's a crazy seller's market. It's also news now that it is starting to slow down across the country. And, if you just listen to that, you would think that it's a fantastic time to sell and that everything is selling super quick, when we know that that's not really the case. Now, in certain areas, they're moving super fast. In certain areas, they're not. We're already seeing, for example, down in this area that we have highlighted here, a shift that's occurring, because in April and May, everything was selling very quick. And we are starting to see a slowdown. But if you have a home in Federal Hill, for example, that's $1 million, that market right now is drastically different than around here in the office in Timonium for $400,000. But there's not enough publication out there. There's not enough resources for publications to express those differences in a way that will attract the kind of readers and advertising that allows them to continue to write. So I'm going to show you what we do here just for Canton, Brewers Hill, Patterson Park. Move this over here. So again, we do this every month, the same highlighted area. And we take a look at how many homes are on the market in that highlighted area with no other filters. We don't look at price point at this juncture. We're just looking at sheer number of units. And it allows us to be able to tell a story here to help our clients understand why the market is behaving the way it is. And what we can see here is that in March and April this past year, we had 2 all-time low months. And I can say all-time low months because, this graph here only goes back 3 years. We've been doing this for 4, but I also know intuitively the way the market was behaving prior to 2017. And we even know, looking at the market the last time we had a boom, that we didn't have an inventory shortage. In fact, inventory levels were higher than they were even at some of these peak periods. It was just that demand was really high. It was even higher. So but the conversation is to be able to say, like, look, right now, if you're a seller here in the Canton area, that, it would appear that the peak levels of appreciation might be behind us. And we can say that, and we can look at like 92 homes coming on the market. If we looked at March of 2019, we had 230 homes come on the market that month. In April, this past April, we had 101 homes. And in April of 2019, we had 283 homes come on the market. I mean, those shifts of supply are astounding, and they start to help people really recognize what is going on in the market. And they start, particularly when you have sellers who are thinking, well, do I sell now? Do I wait a year? Maybe I wait 2 years. Particularly folks who own investment properties. I think anyone could look at this graph here and say, this might be as good as we get for some time. But this is just one graph here. We look at pending inventory. So these are homes. So we have two numbers here. We have the number of homes that are under contract right now, total in this area, and then the number of homes that are under contract in the last 30 days. So what we see here is, first of all, overall, pretty high numbers. So we have all-time low levels of inventory. And we can say our past 4 months, the demand has never seen a higher demand. Can everyone follow that? Let me get a couple like nods or yeses so I know you're with me. Okay, there's a nod. There's a thumbs up. There's a thumbs up. There's a work. Thumbs up. What's that?
Oh, talking to Celine earlier today, him and I are both bidding on the same HUD deal.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all competing for the limited number of houses in the market, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the REO market.
Oh, I'm sure. But I would imagine you're starting to see that weakening a little bit. Are you seeing any weakening? Or is it just as crazy as it was in April?
I've bid the most over list. My last bid is the most over list I've ever bid. I bid 65K over list price.
Did you get it?
I don't know yet. We're waiting.
Okay. All right. So this is an interesting graph too. So we look at the number of homes that have actually sold in the last 30 days. And in this particular area, it's never been higher. We've had 3 months now in a row in this area where we have had more homes close in a 30-day period than we've seen at least in the last 10 years. And I'm going to back up here and remind you that the whole reason why we're going over this is, the level of expertise a conversation like this has, the impact that it has on your clients and your ability to convert. We look at average days in the market. These are the green is the average days for the active homes on the market. The blue are the homes that have actually sold. So you can see, one of the stats that's always interesting to me is the average days in the market for the homes that are on the market. And those numbers are always high compared to the ones that have sold. Can anyone take a jab at why that is? Why is the average days in the market for homes active so much higher than the days in the market for the ones that have actually sold?
It doesn't count the expires.
What's that?
It doesn't count. The equation doesn't count the expired listings.
Well, neither of them do. Because the one guess was that it doesn't that this doesn't take into account, or the actives are taking into account expireds.
Yeah, the time left with expireds and stuff.
Yep. No, so we don't we don't click on expireds. So these are homes that are actually listed as active. So they're not expired yet, but you're kind of getting there because we know that there's still a lot of homes that get listed and don't sell. So, a lot of these homes will eventually become expired or withdrawn or canceled. I mean, you can see this disparity here. 144 days on the market in February was the average days on the market for the homes active, while 67 days on the market was the average of the homes that sold in the last 30 days. So what it means is that for the most part, the homes that are priced well and marketed properly, they sell quickly. Homes that are either mismarketed and or overpriced will sit and languish on the market. Doesn't matter what kind of seller's market or buyer's market you're in. If you overprice it, you're not going to sell. Now, obviously, you get away with a lot more here in this market in terms of overpricing a home. But still, I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has an overpriced listing.
I just got a contract for overpriced listing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
$100K for a shell.
Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of astounds me still though, because, as hot as the market is right now, you still have sellers who want more. And, there are sellers out there. We had one recently where we were looking at the pricing history of a particular property. And actually, it wasn't one of our listings. It was a buyer that we were talking to. And the property had been listed 4 times over the past 5 years at all different levels of pricing. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, depending on the climate of the market. But the one thing that's consistent is that they have always been about 10% over value and they don't sell. And so that's where these numbers can mislead someone.
How do you feel about homes that sell 1 day, 2 days on the market? And do you think that you're serving the client's best interest if you accept an offer within 1 to 2 days?
So repeat that question loud.
How do you feel about markets that have sold within the first 1 to 3 days? Homes that have sold within the first 1 to 3 days on the market, and have you served your client's best interest if you have them accept an offer within the first 1 to 3 days?
So the question was, just to reiterate, do I think that we are serving our clients when we sell a property in the first 1 to 3 days? Is that right? And I think the answer is it really depends. I think that there is, we have sold plenty of properties this year in a very short period of time. And in some way, in a lot of those cases, we're getting better money than we probably should have. There has been a couple shifts in our strategies even this year from that perspective, where if we slightly underpriced a home, we knew that we would get flooded with multiple offers. That still holds true in some of these areas, in Timonium, Lutherville, like that, and that's one of the areas that we do a lot of work in up here. That has held less true of recent downtown. But in April and May, yeah, we would still slightly underprice a home and we would get flooded with offers, and we'd get escalation clauses, we'd get people to waive appraisal contingencies. And the thing is, if we had really focused on pricing it as high as we possibly could, we get less competition and we get less favorable terms because we have less offers. Like one of the conversations that I would have with sellers in this market is, our goal is not to sell a house for what it's worth in this market. It's to be able to sell it for more than what it's worth. How do you do that? I mean, basically what you're saying, what we're prepping ourselves for is to be able to sell the house for more than the house is appraised for. That's a big rock right there to put out there. There's a way to do it, and there's a way to probably prevent yourself from doing it. For example, if we have a house that we think could possibly maybe appraised for $350, and we price it at $350, and we get 1 offer or 2 offers, someone's gonna maybe offer $350, maybe someone offers $360. But the likelihood that we have people waiving appraisal contingencies when we have priced it at the very, very top is less likely than if we price it at $340 and we get 4 or 5 offers. Now there's more competition. People are like, well, what do I have to do to win this out? Oh, I'll either make a appraisal gap contingency. You familiar with that?
No, what's that?
Appraisal gap contingency is like, look, we still need an appraisal contingency. I don't have an endless pocket here, but we'll pay, $10,000 more than the appraised value if it underappraises. So in that example here, you're listed at $350, we'll offer $360. If it appraises for $350, we're good. If it appraises for less than $350, then we'll come back to you, but we don't have the right, if it appraises for $340, to come back to you and say, all right, we want you to lower the price to $340. Instead, we'll come to you and say, well, we want to lower the price to $350. So even that language right there kind of assures the seller that they're going to sell the property for more than the appraised value, which is awesome. But you can't do that if you're in an environment where you just have one offer. So, you know, I think it depends on the kind of market you're in. In this kind of market, 1 to 3 days, I wouldn't judge that as not doing a seller a service. I think in other markets where it's more balanced, or maybe even more of a buyer's market, and that stuff happens, then you can question that, I think, a little bit more harshly.
And we're, business to consumer, but I also compare it to the business to business level, where you see banks and the federal government, they have 10-day minimum on a lot of the listings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though, that time, if we use it properly, is leverage. So for example, when we list a property for sale, we typically will not list a property for sale beyond Thursday. We really try to list Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then we'll advertise an open house that weekend. And then we'll get an offer on Thursday or Friday. And some would say, well, we'll get back to you in 10 days. Well, if you get back in 10 days and you only have one offer, what kind of leverage do you have to maneuver them? Now you got a buyer who's like, well, I just waited 10 days. I'm the only offer. Why am I going to budge? Maybe I overpaid actually. You know what? I'm going to change my offer a little bit. So on the flip side, what we'll do is we'll say, look, like we'll present them as they come, and we're doing an open house this weekend. So if you want us to cancel the open house, make it a good offer. And then you see people jack up their offers. So, I think in the private enterprise, I think putting a minimum on there can do actually more harm to your clients than good. This is why people, this is why Bright has cracked down so hard on coming soon properties and marketing properties before they hit the market, because they want to have somewhat of a level playing field here. But as a seller's agent, I want the best offer I can get. And if I can spook a buyer into paying more because they're afraid of competition, that's a good thing for the seller. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sounds pretty good. Sometimes though, I see folks and they get so excited about, hey, look, we sold this in 1 day. And I look and I think, if it was high enough that you got a good offer in 1 day, how many offers would you have gotten in 10?
Right. Well, yeah, and I've seen that in different markets too, where it's kind of embarrassing as a realtor when you see that kind of stuff out there, because that it's a valid point in some markets. Like when you say sold the house in 24 hours, $20,000 over list. It's like, well, did you price it properly? Did you give it away? Like I could have done that. If you gave it to me for 10,000 less of a listing, what's really funny to me is when you see realtors, when you see a listing get canceled with one realtor, and then a new realtor comes on, drops the price 20 grand, and then sells it in a day or two. And then they go on social media talking about how great they are because they sold the property so quickly. Well, all they did is got the price down. And look, there's skill in that. Like there's a reason why agent B got them to come down in price and agent A wasn't able to. So I don't throw too much shade at agent B for just dropping the price. They were able to have that conversation that got their client to move where they needed to move to get the property sold, while agent A wasn't able to. This is why, especially in the luxury market world, it's, being the first agent is usually not a good thing. There's a saying that I've heard, and I actually use it when I go on my luxury listing appointments, which is, it's better to be someone's first love, second spouse, and third realtor. Because by the time they've gotten to that third realtor, these, a lot of the luxury people, they think that their house is worth whatever they think. And it takes time and it takes the market telling them they're wrong for them to believe them. Because, and having the realtor tell them like, hey, your house isn't worth 1.5, it's worth 1.3. They don't want to hear that at all. They think you're wrong. So they'll go and hire the realtor who will list it for 1.5. And then when it doesn't sell after time, then they fire that realtor. They hire the next one. The next one says, I think you should list it at 1.4. Okay, we'll list it at 1.4. When that doesn't work, then they go to the person and like, all right, remember I said 1.3? And it's usually not remember I said because you're usually out. But some realtor will come and say, hey, look, you're overpriced. You really need to be at 1.3. And at that point, they're like, you know what? We really do want to sell and we're ready to listen to someone.
So sometimes there's a burden between your experience as a realtor and sometimes just following the directions of the client.
Mm-hmm.
Because recently I had a client who asked me to list property for what I could say was too high, but that's because his motivation level of where he was to sell it, he said, no, make me want to sell it.
Right.
It's not my price.
Right.
Before, he just wanted to leave it on the market. He said, don't give us the price of market. Then he would sell it. And we got many lower offers anyway, low ball offers.
Mm-hmm.
When I find myself in a situation, recognizing when it happens, because you got the cognitive dissonance. You think, oh, I know this would sell this time here.
Right.
Price this here, and what is deemed appropriate. At the same time, our clients aren't rational. They don't see the market rationally like we do. They just, okay, we want this, I want this number, what's this here. And sometimes they're the ones who create that scenario.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Do you force their hand?
No. I mean, look, there's first of all, two things to that. So he's talking about clients who, maybe lack a little in their motivation levels and will hear everything you've got to say about the value of a property, but still want to start off at a higher price. What do you do? Was that kind of what you're, and there's two things. One, there has to be an understanding that number one, you don't take every listing that comes your way. There is got to be a level of understanding and respect mutually between your clients and yourself. And at least from my perspective, I know when we list a property, I know that there's a cost. There's a hard cost because we're going to get photography, maybe videography. We're going to get the signs up. We're going to get brochures made. And then there's the time cost. I'm going to spend time. My team is going to spend time on getting this to be a successful launch. If I don't think we can get the property sold, if I don't think the client's motivation levels will match what the market will provide, I'll let them know that. And the thing that you have to be careful of is that sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes, I don't think there's any way we could sell a house for a certain price, and then they do. And I'm like, shit, I'm wrong. And that does happen. And that's and that's okay. I mean, look, I always tell people if that doesn't happen to you, it means you're not taking enough at bats. You need to have more at bats. Same thing with converting. I used to think I was like an awesome listing agent because I converted 90% of my listing appointments. And then I realized I was going on all warm referred listing appointments. And so when I started going on FSBOs and expired listing appointments and I was getting my butt kicked, I was like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I got to revamp this thing. But so the first answer though is that you don't have to take every listing that comes your way. It has to make good business sense for you. You have to balance the financial needs of the business and what the relationship is worth. But oftentimes in my experience, when we overprice a listing and we know it, it leads to more problems in that relationship. We don't get the property sold. They're hitting on us, they're banging on us like, why isn't the property sold? What are you doing? Are you doing enough? And you come back and say, well, I think you should reduce the price. They don't want to hear that. you know, and you know, oftentimes you end up parting ways, and then they go and hire that second. This is where it's better to be that second realtor. You know, the best example I can give is Keller Williams' own Bob Lucido when Cal Ripken was trying to sell his house. You guys know about that story? So Cal Ripken and Bob Lucido had a marketing deal together. They were doing commercials together for a while. Remember that at all?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars of a contract between Bob Lucido and Cal Ripken to sell, to do advertising commercials together for Bob Lucido's team. During that advertising campaign, Cal Ripken put his estate up for sale on Falls Road. It was listed for $15 million with Monument Sotheby's. Cal Ripken's.
I remember that.
Yeah. It was listed for sale with Monument Sotheby's. And it made huge news that it was like, how the heck did Bob Lucido not get that listing? He's paying the guy hundreds of thousands of dollars to do commercials with him. And he hired Charlie Hatter. Shouldn't use names. It rhymes with Farley Fatter. Right? We can edit that one out. And I talked to Bob. I said, Bob, how did you not get that listing? And he's like, he wanted $15 million for it, and I don't think we can get it. And I told him, if this other broker thinks that they can get $15 million for you or anywhere close to it, hire them. But when they're ready to drop the price, when they tell you to drop the price, let them go and hire me. Well, that's exactly what ended up happening. It's exactly what ended up.
I was going to say, I thought it didn't go for this.
No, it went for, I think it went for $3 million. Adam Jones bought it. It went for $3 million. And Adam Jones bought it, and then he, I think, 2 years later, sold it for 3.4. Somebody bought it, some flipper bought it for 3.4 million, and then resold it for 4.5 million. But the point was, it was out in left field, and I mean, it's a beautiful, stunning piece of property, and probably undervalued at 3 million. But you know, for him to be able to say, I don't want to be that guy that just overpriced. I don't want my sign up just for the sake of having the sign up. And he knew that there'd be some publicity hits over the fact that he's starring on commercials and he's not hired as the realtor. But I think at the end of the day, he got the best of that deal. You know, and I got to imagine that if he had actually acquiesced and listed it for 15 million, he wouldn't have been the one who ended up selling it for what it did sell for. So I would just say, you know, be confident in your ability to price property, and be confident in your ability to sell the property. And if you're not confident that you can sell the property, be real with people. I think, you know, people will be much, for as far as long-term of a relationship, they will respect that so much more than if you just acquiesce. And if you can't, then you have to have that conversation. Like, look, I really don't think the property is going to sell at this price. I will do it, and I will give you my best, but I don't want to be judged by my inability or ability to sell a property for a price that I don't think makes sense.
I just don't understand. I mean, I understand you being off a little bit, but
You talking about that? Well, that's an extreme example, but it was the first one that came to mind. But there's plenty of times, I mean, in my own business where, you know, we have a property, someone wants to list it for 400, and I'm like, this is 360 tops. You know,
I mean, but still, that's not no 15 million.
Well, yeah. Well, look, there's vanity to this, and luxury markets, I think, more so than any other market, the biggest challenge in the luxury market is dealing with ego. You know, it's not about even dollars and cents, it's ego. It's, you know, it was probably Cal Ripken thinking that his beautiful piece of property was worth $15 million, and somebody told him that, and he believed it. And then there was another realtor out there who agreed enough to start marketing it. So, I mean, look, if I'm Cal Ripken and I got two very well-known realtors respected in the community, one's telling me it's worth 5 million and the other one's telling me it's worth 10 million, who am I gonna listen to?
Mhm. You want to shoot for the 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Quick question. For as luxury realty, right? Do your commission change?
That's a good question. I mean, I will bend on commission in luxury.
So, like how would you do it then? I mean, what would you start about? Would you start off with the 3%?
Well, no. So I know that this gets into a hairy thing that, like, I know if our broker was here, he would be like jumping down our throats to even have that conversation. But, you know, I think the important thing I've learned, and, you know, Bob Lucido and Craig Northrup, they will list properties all day long at 1%. You know, so they can stake claim to, you know, their units, their volume. You know, they never talk about their profit margin. They talk about how many homes that they sold and what was the sales volume. And there's, I think, certainly something to be said for folks who don't do a whole lot of luxury or are just starting, that they need to almost build like a portfolio, and to not look at your first luxury listing or second luxury listing as this big boom of commission dollars, but to think of it as building your portfolio. So the next time you have that appointment, you can say, this is some experience to lean on.
That was a good answer. That was a good answer without even really getting into how much you charge. But
Yeah.
that was a real good answer though. I think that opened up some doors right there.
So anyway, we got just a couple minutes left here. I didn't go through all my slides here. There's a couple of cool things here that I've done. This breaks down our absorption rate by price point. And so this, I'm gonna just run through this real quick, and then I'll stay like a couple minutes late for some Q&A here. But you know, with respect to the absorption rates, you can see here, this is the $200,000 to $300,000 price point in Canton, and you can see the ridiculously low levels of inventory. And you can see the conversation that we would have with a seller in this price point versus the 600,000 and up is very different. So here in $600,000 and up, you know, it's technically a buyer's market. So, you know, it doesn't matter what the news says around the world, around the country, around the state, even around our region. Like, this is, if you have a $750,000 house in Canton to sell, this is what you're facing. You're facing more inventory on the market right now, more competition than the demand has absorbed over the last 6 months. And so if you want to price when it comes to a pricing strategy, you have to be more aggressive from a pricing standpoint here than at the, you know, when you got a 1.5 month level of supply. You know, and this is why, you know, honestly, I've said for a long time, I would rather have 3 homes for sale in this price point than 1 home for sale in this price point. Got all my eggs in one basket. Got people here who are listing and not selling, and over here, they're all moving. And I don't have my eggs all in one basket. You know, I can sell 2 of them out of 3 and still make money. So I'll open it up. I know we're at 12 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I know I've got another group of people that are going to be waiting for me, but I don't want to end this without opening this up for some questions. Unless there are no questions.
Have you pulled up the growth rate, the actual price growth rate? I think over 22% over the past year or so.
No, I haven't. And so, you know, this is another interesting thing to me. And this is like a great talking point with folks, is to be able to take statistics like that and have your own dialogue around it. Because like I was hearing prior to the pandemic, a lot of our work downtown, we were seeing depreciation in values. You guys see that at all before the pandemic? Before the pandemic, in the city, we were seeing pricing going down.
Maybe in selected areas. Generally though, for a while, I think we've had 3% growth per year. And then 2020 was 15%. And now this year, I mean, it's been odd since the pandemic, but typically it's 3% growth per year.
So I'm going to show you something that I did because I'm a nerd, man. Like, I think I'm a cool nerd, but I'm still a nerd. So what I was experiencing is I was going on appointments and I was seeing 3%, 6% growth, seeing it in the Baltimore Sun, city values are up 6%. And to think about, like, for a moment, what does that mean? Does it mean that your home has gone up 6%? Because that's what most people read that and interpret that as. They read an article that the average home sale is up 6%. And they think, what's it mean for me? Oh, for me, it means that my house went up 6% value. My $300,000 house is now worth $309,000. And what I was seeing as I was going on a lot of listing appointments downtown is that homes were selling for the same exact price that they bought it for 4 years ago. And in a lot of cases, less than what they bought it for 4 years ago. But Baltimore Sun says it's up 6%. How the hell is that? One's got to be right, one's got to be wrong. Or do they? Because when the Baltimore Sun says that the average home is up 3% or 6%, whatever it is, it doesn't mean that values as a whole have gone up 3% or 6%. It means that of the homes that have sold, those homes, the average sales price is 3% higher than the average home that sold a year before. Well, what if you have a bunch of new construction in the community?
There's also, you can also look at like the rate of the tax assessment increase.
Ugh, I would almost not look at that at all because the tax assessments in Baltimore City are so screwed up. So screwed up. So here's how I geeked out. I'm going to share my screen here again. I see you all haven't left me because this is good stuff. But this is the level of this is how do you become an expert in your market? I would actually show this to clients, and because people would say, why are you telling me I should sell my house? Like, that we've been through this has been a boom for real estate. And even in the news, like no one was talking in 2019 about values going down. Baltimore Sun, they were saying it was going up, and they were. That's what they would say. So I started looking at the real information that was really relevant to our clients. And what I was doing is I looked at homes here that sold. This was Q1 of 2020. So this was before the pandemic. Homes that sold in 2020 that had been previously bought between 2012 and 2018. And what did they buy? What did they sell for in 2020? And what did they buy it for previously? And then I went into each one. And this is not throughout the whole city. This was in my area that I was seeing this. This was in Canton. You can do this in any area. And then I looked at each sale to see which ones had major improvements. Because obviously, here's the thing, in Canton, a developer buys a shell in 2020 for $150,000, and then they fix it up and they sell it for $400,000. And then the Baltimore Sun says, well, the average price, if there was just those two homes, they would say the average price in Baltimore City just rose by 200%.
Mm-hmm.
So did the average home value go up 200%?
I understand. So you don't go into the whole lot of tax assessment world. That's why I would still use that as a guideline. I'm saying, well, look at transactions that are occurring, and they're occurring way well below the tax assessment.
Well, they typically do though.
Well above the tax assessment.
Well, they typically do though. The only times that you typically see sales go above or below the assessed value, in my opinion, is when the homes had previously sold for a higher price.
You know, just because, okay, so there's the fair market value and being able to evaluate the numbers and see the averages that way, but that, you still have a deeper understanding. If you were to drill down on those transactions and look at it, there are certain ways you could understand whether or not those folks had good deals or not. Who are the ones you want?
Well, that's a conversation I would love to have and understand a little bit better, because when I look at the tax records, I don't get, I don't know how to get anything out of it. So we'll talk about that offline. But what I did here is I eliminated all of the homes that had significant improvements. And so because I really wanted to see what were like homes selling for. What is the rate of appreciation? And what you can see here, I mean, look, here's a property that was bought in 2015 for $351, sold in first quarter of 2020 for $319.9, down 9%. You know, this is someone bought the house in 2013 for $332. They sold it 7 years later for $335. Like, being able to show this stuff to our clients. So when I'm sitting there telling them, and this was happening a lot, this is why I did it. I didn't do it just because I was interested. I did it because I was tired of going into appointments and people saying, well, I thought the market's up. Why am I selling the house for like 5 years later, 7 years later for the same price or less? And I said, you know, you're not the only one who's saying this though, because I'm going on other appointments. So I'm starting to see this reoccurring. And I'm like, you know what? I got to figure out, is it just like my people have the bad luck or what? And being able to put this together and then being able to show it to my clients painted a picture that it's not me, it's not my price. It's not like this is, you know, across the board. I mean, there's a lot of it. I mean, when I looked at it as a whole in Q1, as a whole, over an 8 year or 7 year period here, we saw appreciation of 0.35%. That's, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it was kind of dejecting to me because I'm such a city person and I love the city, and I've helped people buy and sell in the city for a long time, but the rate of return sucks. You know, I mean, it's crazy because like I got clients here who, you know, they sold their house. We sold their house in 2014. And a best example is I helped a family in 2014 sell a house for $200,000 in Highlandtown. They bought a house in Reisterstown for $275,000. The person who bought the house in Highlandtown in 2014 for $200,000 called me up last year and said, hey, I want to sell that house. And I'm like, great. Went over there. They redid the entire kitchen. Really nice. We sold that house for $205,000. He put like $15,000 into the kitchen alone. So the value went down over that period of time. Meanwhile, those clients who sold that house and bought in Reisterstown for $275,000, they also called me last year to sell their house in Reisterstown, and we sold that house for $360,000. Of course, it's low. Yeah. But this is how, like, this is the disparity of equity that occurs in real estate, though. And you know, it was an illustration here of certain neighborhoods. Like, you can't just say like the market's up across the board. You have to really drill it down to the neighborhood.
Because families don't go shopping based on
Right.
based on emotions,
Right.
location, and other
Right.
things like that. We're not looking at it from an instant equity perspective.
Right.
As a necessity for the deal. You know?
Of course.
Well, I'm sorry. I know this might seem like a kind of a crazy question. Who comes up with the idea how much a property is worth because of this, because you have a property in Canton that's may go for like $475,000, but you might have another property in, let's just say, Emerson Avenue, and it might even be better than the property in Canton. It's going to go for less than the one in Canton, and it might even be Canton might be smaller, but it still will be $460,000. How did they come up with that theory that this is worth?
Well, that's a whole supply demand I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's worth what people are willing to pay for.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I said, like, how they even come up with that number though?
Well, they come up with it because of the last sale. You know, how did that first sale happen? I don't know. You know, but you know, it's all historical data. It's, you know, an appraiser is going to go out there. I would actually not even say that a house is worth what a person's willing to pay. I'd say a house is worth what a bank is willing to lend, because unless it's a cash offer, you know, and I get into this argument with people, like, you know, when I'm at a bar, you know, people are like, no, a house is worth what a buyer is willing to pay. I'm like, well, a house is worth what a buyer is willing to pay with their own money, but a house isn't worth what they're willing to pay with someone else's money.
Training request, maybe in the future, could we have a class on hypothecated funds?
On about what?
Hypothecated funds.
Hypothecating funds?
Yeah, because we talk about values and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, what are the outliers, or what are the scenarios where you can, you know, you're doing privately hypothecated funds.
Okay.
For the seller.
Okay.
Because then, you know, it's not based off the banks anymore. We're privately financing, we're writing the agreements. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, they're still, I would tell you, those are still going to be based on appraisals though, you know, because, and more harshly, you know, if anyone's had experience with hard money, I mean, you know, when they tell you like 65% LTV, they'll lend up to, and then you see what the appraisal is. The appraisals are always squeezed tight.
Do you need appraisal to do owner financing?
No, you don't need to. And owner financing is a different ballgame, but private financing, usually they want an appraisal, you know, because they want to know that, I mean, they want to know that they can take the property back and not lose, you know? So, I mean, that's really, when you're talking about hard money or private financing, aside from owner financing, it comes down to, you know, I want interest, and if I don't get interest, I want the property, and the asset's got to be worth it. So it's all collateralized. But we can, I think, you know, even like a CMA class, like how we do a market value evaluation. Like, look, the simple fact is, when we're doing a market valuation on a property in Canton, we don't look at homes in Edmondson. We don't have to. Like, there's plenty of homes right in Canton to look at. You know, now, if there were no homes that sold in Canton, we would have to go outside of Canton to look for comparables. But as long as there's comparables in that select area, you're good. You know, it's the same reason why, you know, if we're looking at a condo in a certain building, I won't even look at condos outside of that building unless there are none inside the building. But if there are comparables inside the building, and we just want to lean on like, oh, well, but they got a better value in that building and it's the same square footage, so we'll go there. It doesn't work like that. You know, an appraiser is going to say, well, why did you ignore all of the comparables in your own building? And that's what the market is likely to say too. Why are you ignoring? I'm not paying pricing for that building. That building has this amenity, that amenity. It was built this year, and you know, when we have comparables right here in this building. So it's the same point. There are no online questions, I take it. Bernice, Ashley.
No, it was good.
No questions.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Did you have oh, you said no questions. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.